Today we were counting down the top 10 most valuable Marvel comics of the year 1957. These books are ultra rare, all of them, especially in high grade, and these are all iconic, highly collected books, historically important. Let's check out the top 10 as soon as we look at a little bit of history. What was Marvel up to in 1957? Well, the company was called Atlas Comics at this time because they were distributed by Atlas Distribution, and at this time they were able to publish a lot more titles with Stan Lee as the editor. And you'll see on this chart, Marvel and Atlas started 26 new titles this year, but almost, well, all of them basically are short-lived. You can see the longest ones only lasted 4 issues. Then look at all the titles that were canceled this year. You can see there's a gigantic list. There's about roughly 40 titles canceled because they were prolific at putting out tons of different titles, tons of different genres. Why were so many titles canceled? Because Marvel changed their distribution in 1957 and landed up going with Independent, who landed up limiting the number of titles that they were allowed to put on the newsstands each month. Due to this, Stan Lee and Atlas had to cut back most of their titles and even had to lose some of their staff. What survived out of this Atlas Implosion of 1957 was that Stan Lee decided 15 titles to continue. So presumably these may have been their best 15 selling titles, or maybe it was just they picked sort of a couple of the best of each genre. So you can see some classics like Patsy Walker, Millie the Modeler on the list. We've also got Strange Tales, which was the horror mystery title. Battle was a war comic. We've got some westerns on here. And we've got one silly young kid's title, Homer the Happy Ghost. And finally, World of Fantasy would debut at the end of the year, and that would also be more in the horror, mystery, sci-fi category. Because of this, you'll notice that there's not too many of these titles which are highly collected by the superhero collectors, and that really influences our top 10 today. So you'll see why certain titles make the list and why it seems like there isn't much variety. It's because there literally was a big cut in all the titles from Atlas. So the number 10 most valuable Marvel and Atlas comic of 1957 is Strange Tales 57. Digging a little deeper, we find out this is a Bill Everett horror cover. Black background cover, very tough to find, especially in high grade. Manny Stallman and Gray Morrow also did art on this issue. It's the 10th most valuable comic of the year for Marvel. It also ranks 209th most valuable Marvel Atlas comic of the 50s. Now look how rare this is. There are only 20 copies graded on the CGC census, all grades combined. Only 2 rank 9.0 or higher. Heritage Auctions has only sold 6 copies of this book in the last 20 years. Looking at the Overstreet price guide, this is a pricey book. $1,150 in 9.2 for a raw copy in the 2021 Overstreet price guide. You'll see there's small growth consistently in all grades, all conditions. But you can see how small and scarce this book is. There are 2 9.0s on the census. You can see which rank the highest. Number 9 of the year is also a Strange Tales issue. It's the issue before. Issue number 56, featuring a Bill Everett robot cover. And this is 6 years before Iron Man came along. Reed Crandall, Doug Waldie, Pete Morisi, Vince Coletta, and Robert Sale art, all in this issue. 24 copies graded. There actually is 1 9.0 or higher. Heritage has only sold 3 copies ever. Again, same price breakdown for Overstreet for the last few years. And on the census, there's the 1 9.0. The number 8 book of the year is Strange Tales number 55. This is another Bill Everett cover of Jack in the Box, brown background. Paul Reinman, George Russos, and Joe Manley art on this issue. There are 28 graded by CGC, 1 9.0 or higher. Heritage has sold 6. Same price growth in all conditions, slow but steady. And on the census again, only 1 9.0. The number 7 book of the year, Strange Tales 54, another horror cover by Bill Everett. The Long Sleep, What Would His Awakening Bring? Black background cover. 19 copies graded by CGC, 4 9.0 or higher, so we got a few more high-grade copies out on the market. Heritage has sold 8 of this ghoulish cover. Same breakdown in Overstreet for this one as well. There is a 9.4, believe it or not, of this book, 2 9.2s and 1 9.0. So a little more demand for this book, a few more higher grade copies getting graded, which is nice to see. The number 6 comic of the year is another Strange Tales issue, but this one's worth a little bit more. This is Strange Tales 58, cover by Bill Everett with art by Al Williamson and Matt Baker, two of the most important Marvel artists of the 50s. 21 copies graded in total, 3 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 7. Nice cover. He floats through the air, and everyone's onlooking, watching this guy floating. And this one, again, slow and steady growth in the Overstreet price guide. There is a 9.6, unbelievably, of this book. This is the highest grade book we're going to see today. There's also a 9.4 and a 9.0. Next on our list, number 5 is Journey into Mystery 44. Finally, we get a new title on the list, but it also features a Bill Everett cover with art by Al Williamson, Doug Waldie, Don Heck, and Gene Colan. Bunch of major artists again. Ranks 5th of the year, 184th of the decade. There are 20 copies graded. There are 0 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 6. Overstreet price guide, this one a little more valuable. Again, growing. But notice in the last decade, this book has doubled in even the lowest grades, and it has gone up 2.5 times in higher grades. This cover is in more demand. 20 copies graded in total. The highest, though, is an 8.0 of this book. Hard to believe it's that low. The number 4 comic of the year, Journey into Mystery 43. This is one of the famous prototype issues where Stanley Writing tried some interesting ideas which would later re-show up in his Marvel superheroes years later in the 60s. And this is a prototype issue of an Invisible Girl character. And this is the first of 3 Fantastic Four related prototype comics that Stanley would do. And this issue does predate Fantastic Four number 1 by 4 years. This issue features Jim Mooney, Al Williamson, and Bernard Bailey artwork. There are 30 copies graded of this book, higher demand. 4 9.0s or higher. Heritage has sold 10, so definitely more demand for this book. Same growth, it's more than doubled in lowest grades, going up 2.5 times in high grades raw. The highest graded copy is a 9.2. The number 3 comic of the year, we're back to Strange Tales. And this is a very important issue. It's got a Fred Kita cover, Gene Colan, Doug Waldie, and Bernie Krigstein art. 162 most valuable Marvel comic of the decade. Only 18 copies graded with no high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 4. Kind of a classic cover here. They're all in the movie theater laughing, except for our main character who's got that fear on his face as he sees somebody coming towards him. In the Overstreet price guide, this is a $1,300 book, slowly moving up in all grades. The highest graded copy, though, is an 8.0. There just literally is no nice copies out there. That's the best you can get. The number 2 comic of the year, Yellow Claw number 3. This has got a Bill Everett cover, Jack Kirby artwork. This is the 3rd appearance of the villain Yellow Claw. This series would only run for 4 issues. Number 2 of the year and 80th most valuable of the decade. 32 copies graded by CGC. There is 1 high-grade copy. Heritage has sold 14 of this high-demand series. Really nice artwork on this one. And again, this is an $1,850 book in 9.2 raw. And again, steady growth, slow but steady in all grades. The highest graded copy is a 9.0. And the number 1 valuable and most important Marvel Atlas comic of 1957 is Yellow Claw number 4. It's the final issue, and it's the last appearance of the Yellow Claw until he would return in Strange Tales 10 years later. This features John Severin cover and art. Jack Kirby also did art on this. It's the 4th appearance of the villain Yellow Claw. And it ranks 75th of the decade and number 1 of the year. There are 33 copies graded by CGC. There are no high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 13 in total. Dark background cover again. Comics Code Authority, Atlas Comics logo stamp in the top left corner for distribution. This is a $1,950 book, 9.2 raw, even an expensive book in low grades. On the census, the highest graded copies are 8.5. Now what we're going to do right now is we're going to compare these 10 books on the CGC census and see what we learn. Well, you should have noticed that all of these books are extremely rare in all conditions, and there are very few copies graded by CGC in all grades combined, even though these are expensive books. The most common book on the entire list is Yellow Claw number 4, with a whopping 33 copies graded by CGC, the highest being an 8.5. And on the low end, the book with the fewest copies graded, Strange Tales 59, has only 18 copies graded, the highest being an 8.0. So there you go. Fun to compare, but just interesting to see how rare these books really are. Even with high price tags, they're not out there. Go check eBay listings just to see if there are copies listed and see what kind of prices they are. You'll find a lot of books are priced way above guide due to their rarity. Please subscribe to this channel. We do this every week. Thanks for watching.